This episode is brought to you by Strength Portal. You need a single software platform that enables your trainers to deliver consistent, high-quality workouts, track client progress, and scale your business. The problem is you're still using pen and paper or basic spreadsheets to run your business, which leads to poor client experiences, inaccurate tracking, and prevents you from growing your business, making you feel frustrated. Strength Portal understand your challenge and have worked closely with the HIIT industry to create a software platform to manage and scale your niche business. You can integrate with MindBody, manage a standardized exercise and workout library for your team, track workouts effectively, and produce client reports at the click of a button. Strength Portal is used by multiple businesses in the high-intensity strength training community, namely Discover Strength, Smart Strength Austin, MedX Precision Fitness, and more. Starting with Strength Portal is super simple. Number 1, sign up for the best package for your business. Number 2, let Strength Portal take the load off and help onboard your business onto the platform. And number 3, start delivering consistent workout experiences and scale your business to the next level. To help support the podcast, please go to strengthportal.com/high intensity business and sign up now so you can stop feeling frustrated about your business and start to scale your business to its true potential. Go to strengthportal.com/high intensity business. Lawrence Still here, and welcome back to High Intensity Business, the podcast. We discuss high intensity strength training and provide you with the tools, the tactics, and the strategies to help you grow your strength training business. To get free resources to help you start and grow your HIIT business, including sales presentations that are proven to help you get more customers, PDFs on how to get clients and attract great trainers, financial forecasting and cash flow templates, and many more transcripts and resources, please go to highintensitybusiness.com/free. Today's topic is a Q&A with Tim Ryan. So we did one of these recently, but we still had a number of questions that didn't get answered. Hopefully today we'll get to a few of those. So the ones that I hope to get to will be how to train athletes, whether a client should lock out or not on a chest press machine, and there's many more as well. But I won't say them just in case we don't get to them, because Tim and I have a habit of spending 2 hours on one question. Today's guest is Tim Ryan. Tim is a master, Superstar instructor and owner of Strong Life Personal Training in Barrington, Illinois. And you can find out all about Tim's services to help you with your personal training operation, whether that's helping mentoring your team to become better personal trainers, or modify and improve some of your machines and much more. You can contact him about that, seminars as well, over at stronglifetraining.com, or by emailing him directly at info@stronglifetraining.com. We'll get there in a minute, Tim. And Tim, welcome back to the podcast. Great to have you back. Always enjoy speaking to you.
Thank you, Lawrence. Glad to be here.
Awesome. Great to have you. And let's get into some questions. So just really carrying on from where we left off, it's a really simple question. How do you train athletes? What's that process?
Well, I would say first off, you train them much the same way that you would train anybody else. Of course, there may be some specific considerations that you want to address with athletes, and that would depend on, the specific sport or athletic event that they're involved in. But one of the things that we should address, and this kind of falls in with some of the other misconceptions that go on within the fitness industry, particularly now, with this idea of functional training. Oftentimes if what goes on out there and what a lot of trainers believe that you need to do is that you need to somehow craft the exercise program and make it mimic what they're going to be doing in their sport or in their athletic event. And that you should come up with exercises that sort of try to duplicate, or, as I say, mimic things that they're maybe going to be doing. So this would be one of our general principles, that this kind of a notion is completely backwards, and I think the biggest thing that people misunderstand with this is that the application of, the skills involved with a sport or athletic event is a completely separate thing from the actual building of strength and physically conditioning the body. Okay. But people believe that you need to combine the two, and that if you don't combine the two, that somehow the physical conditioning aspect is not going to transfer over to, the sport or something like that. But what you first have to understand is that those skills and those athletic abilities are developed completely differently and very specifically, and not associated with the physical conditioning standpoint. So it's more of a neurological based event, the sport skills and so forth. It's more of a neurological based event, and it's sort of the acquisition of learning and sort of the mind to muscle connection and so forth. So this would fall under the purview of the scientific discipline known as motor learning. And motor learning concerns itself with, how do human beings acquire skills and various abilities and become more skilled and more proficient at those activities. And we know through that the science behind that is that those types of things are very, very specific. So you need to practice, rehearse, refine your skill by practicing that skill, and practicing it in a highly specific manner, applied in the manner in which you're going to be using your body and performing in your real event. So as soon as you start to modify that in a way where, let's say, you add resistance to it, or you try to go into the gym and develop an exercise that appears to be, similar to what you might be doing on the field, let's say, but you're adding resistance and you're doing something, in the gym. What you're doing is you're just creating a separate skill. You're not doing something that's going to, make it transferable to the field. You're just developing a different skill. So you can get whatever you're doing in the gym, you can get better at it, and you can develop the skill of performing that exercise in the gym, but that doesn't mean it's going to transfer onto the field and somehow be applicable to training you as an athlete for your event. Okay. So the way I look at this is that it really, from that standpoint, it does not matter what their sport is, what their event is. Does not matter how they're going to use the body. What we're doing in the gym is we are sort of training, conditioning the body to be physically more capable. Okay. Another way of looking at it is we're building the raw materials. Okay. So in other words, we are, developing that muscular strength and power. We're developing endurance. We're enhancing our flexibility. We're enhancing our cardiovascular efficiency and so forth. So all of those physical attributes are going to be enhanced. And then whatever it is you're going out there and doing with your body, you're going to be better at, you're going to be better prepared for, your body's going to be more able to perform and have those capacities that you need. But of course, as an athlete, you have a separate area of training, and that would be the skill-based training, but that's done outside of the gym, as I say, doing very specific training drills and practice and rehearsal and things like that. So our jobs as trainers is, as I say, to kind of build those raw materials. And if I could use sort of an analogy,
I love the way you put that, by the way. Raw materials, so much easier to understand when you put it like that. Thank you. Yeah. Go on. Sorry.
Yeah. And a good analogy is that if we were trying to have like a automobile racing team, and we know that we want to have a a good car. We want to have a good, powerful car that's very fast and has all these attributes and various abilities of the car itself to perform. So we're looking at, the engine, the power, the fuel delivery system, the transmission, the suspension, the steering, all these types of things. We want those to be as good as possible. But of course, then we also need a driver to drive the car. Mm-hmm. Okay. So in this case, the driver would be considered the athlete. All right. And the automobile would be considered our body. All right. So what we're doing on our end of things is we're not training the driver to improve his skills of driving and to make a better driver. What we're doing is improving the automobile and making it as well performing as possible. So as I say, when I say we're building those raw materials, that's what we're doing. We're improving the engine, we're improving the suspension, we're improving the steering, and all of those types of things. So we're building and enhancing our body, and then separate from that, the athlete is going out and training and practicing and rehearsing their skills to become better at applying those.
So
things.
It's like for the gaming nerds out there, right? It's like when you're playing Mario Kart or one of these kinds of games, and each car you select has different like power, speed, handling, and has 1 bar to 5 bars, and 5 bars is like maximum. So with strength training, you're optimizing those bars, but the thing you're not impacting obviously is the athlete, which in this case would be how good the gamer is, right? It's like when I'm thinking of a friend of mine who deliberately uses a rubbish driver, but because he's very good, it doesn't matter. Like he's got the skills, right? So there's another terrible analogy. I'm terrible with analogies, but that would be mine. But it's just carrying on from yours, but in a nerd context.
Right. So I think the listeners can refer back to one of our other podcasts where we talked about the 6 factors of functional ability. And those factors outline the different influences over, the functional ability, which sports and athletic performance would be a type of, functional ability. So that would be helpful as well as, what we're talking about here today. But so with that kind of thing in mind, okay, and what I said at the outset is that you're going to train an athlete in the gym in a very similar way to how you would train anybody else. Okay. The only maybe slight differences that you would give consideration to is that you may utilize certain exercises in the training to work on muscle groups that are particularly, predominant and heavily used in the sport, or also things that are stressed in such a way that you want to provide protection. So, for example, for a football player, you definitely want to build their neck strength, okay, because the neck strength is going to help protect their neck and their head. And there's evidence that good, strong neck muscles can be helpful in helping to minimize or prevent concussions and things of that nature. So, I think neck training is important for everybody, but we could say, well, it would be particularly important for, a football player or a wrestler or something like that to really build that neck strength and have it be protective for them. If I'm training a golfer, okay, then something like the torso rotation, or another name, the rotary torso machine, is going to be very important because it develops those muscles that rotate the torso, which is obviously very heavily used in, driving a golf ball and hitting a golf ball. Same with, the low back and things like that. So I may slightly customize a program, making sure that I'm involving certain exercises that are going to be particularly important for whatever that sport is, grip strength and, things of that nature as well. So certainly you can sort of specialize the program to involve certain exercises, but other than that, you're training them. It's all the same principles as anybody else. There's, no special unique thing about an athlete that makes, you train them differently. Okay. So all of the principles that we've discussed, all the principles that we apply same type of thing going forward. It's just maybe giving consideration for the exercises you're using and rounding out the program with in addition to being a full body, strength and conditioning program, you're maybe including some special things for somebody that's going to be stressing certain body parts and really stressing certain muscle groups. Another little thing for somebody like a runner, obviously doing the leg exercises is important, but even more specifically, runners have a lot of problems with what are called shin splints, where they get that irritation in their frontal shin and the tibialis anterior muscle, and it can get inflamed and things like that. Repetitive overuse and things like that. There are, they're rare, but there's a couple of companies out there that make a tibial machine where you can do that that anterior flexion exercise for your tibia. There's also a device that it's called the DARD, dynamic axial resistance device, where you can put barbell plates on it and this thing slips over your foot and your legs hang off the end of the bench and you kind of can go through that flexion. So, if I had somebody that was a big runner and was prone to those, I might, especially involve that and some calf exercises and that tibial exercise and things like that. So, certainly you can customize the program a little bit in terms of the choice of exercises and how you construct the routine. But other than that, you're trying to build full body strength and conditioning of all the major muscle groups. You're trying to involve all the same principles that we apply with anybody else.
How do you, I know it might vary from athlete to athlete, but generally, how do you sell the workout to athletes? Like, do you describe how it's going to help them potentially become more injury resistant or improve performance? Or what these are the things that you touch on most with athletes?
Yeah. Well, one of the things that I always find difficult when this subject comes up, or if I am talking to an athlete or say an athlete's father who's thinking of having their son or something train with me, where it's difficult is that when you go to other trainers, or what other trainers might tell you, they're going to act like they've got some special magical functional based program that's going to be specifically transferable and some sort of magic effect on making them a better athlete. And obviously, based on what I just told you, there is no special magical program for an athlete that's going to do something like that. So my program doesn't sound as mysterious and magical and exciting. So I would approach it the way you just said, is that I would kind of have a little mini discussion based on how I just answered this question and kind of talk about some of those things. And I would kind of address just the idea that what we're doing here is we're building the raw materials and we're making, the human body as strong and, capable as possible, and definitely touch upon those injury things. And depending on who I was talking to, I have, and many of us have, very unique exercises that you wouldn't necessarily find in a gym. Not too many gyms are going to have a neck machine, and not too many gyms are going to have, the kind of the MedX isolated, the exercise lumbar machine, or even the medical lumbar machine, or the rotary torso. Other gyms may have rotary torso, but there's no restraints. There's no stabilization for the pelvis or anything like that. So, some of the equipment we have is very unique and very high tech, and so to speak. So I would probably kind of tout some of that equipment that we have that nobody else would have, and our ability to strengthen more effectively certain body parts and muscle groups to not only strengthen and improve their abilities, but safety, protection from injury and things.
Yeah, no, I love that. I think you did a great job there. I think there's a couple comments I just wanted to make. Obviously, if you're dealing with an athlete, a young athlete who's got loads of time and wants to be in the gym all the time and probably doesn't have the budget, it's probably not more often than not a good fit for our business, or isn't, sorry, a good
Yeah.
fit for most of our businesses. I don't know, maybe there's an exception if you've got a parent who wants to pay for their son or daughter who's an athlete to train with you because they believe in your particular approach. And I feel like if they just listen to what you said around the science around the difference between skill training and strength and conditioning and the differences and how that works and the way you, in the analogies you used, I think any smart person is going to, I think is more likely to understand that is the smart approach. I guess what most of us certainly speak for ourselves, what we come across more is the kind of weekend warrior, the type A busy professional type who also happens to be a serious runner or a serious cyclist or a serious fill in the blank sport person. And I like to say all the things you just said, and I'm curious to hear what else you'd say as well. But one of the things I like to play on is time efficiency, right? It's obviously we're always talking about efficiency. And if you say, hey, you know all that stuff you were doing around your quote unquote cycling or whatever it is, you can reduce that down to like a 30-minute session once a week. And then just focus all your free time where you want to into your skill, right? And so that can work quite well. And then the other thing I might talk about is because if these are generally older men and women, then it's like aging gracefully, making sure that you're not just relying on your sport to give you the adaptations that you want to age well. You do need to have some safe strength training in there to really make sure that you're optimizing as much as you can in a safe, efficient way. So those would be my kind of things I would lean on. But would you do the same, or is there other things that you might mention when talking to that particular individual?
Yeah, those are all certainly valid points. And one of the things I oftentimes do, even if I'm just talking to a prospective client that does like to run a lot or cycle or, do those different things, is I tout the fact that with our program, training twice a week, 30 minutes a session, that's all the exercise you need to be doing. So think of all the other time that frees up in your schedule to do the things you really like to do. You don't have to be going to the gym 6 days a week for an hour and a half and doing all this and then trying to figure out how are you going to fit in your other activities that you enjoy doing, whether it's the running or cycling or golf or whatever it is. But just the idea that this is just going to be so much more efficient and free up more of your time during the week to do the things that you like. And I think that's a tremendous business benefit for athletes, because athletes, particularly if they're on like a team sport or something like that, and they're having to practice every day for a couple of hours. I think of this like with football teams. If you're practicing every day on the football field for a couple of hours and you're tackling and getting tackled and hitting and running up and down the field and doing all of this stuff, I mean, who wants to then go into the weight room and do strength and conditioning for four times a week for an hour each, or something like that? So the idea that this could be eliminate so much of that time in the gym, it's going to enhance your recovery. It's going to give you more time for practice, and other things are just more time for rest and recovery, and just not have to be dealing with all of the stuff that these athletes typically have to do.
Yeah, I totally agree. I think almost all of us are better off just avoiding that younger athlete population, because you're going to be butting up against coaching folklore and massive conflict of interest there with their own strength and conditioning trainers and that kind of thing. So I would almost look to qualify those people out before they even get anywhere near the studio.
Well, it's interesting that you bring that up, because oftentimes clients, they'll try to give me advice, or they'll know that I'm, looking for new clients or something like that. And they'll say, what you really ought to do, all these parents out there, they're obsessed with getting their kids to be great athletes. And they all have this, vision that their kids are going to be these great athletes and they're going to get a scholarship to a university or something like that. And they'll pay anything. They hire all these, coaches and, special, tutoring and, in the sports and stuff. And they would have no problems paying for their kid to have a personal trainer if they thought that was going to really help them, in their sports. So you really ought to hit upon that. And I mean, I think that's nice advice, and they're obviously being sincere in doing that. But then, based on what you just said, is like, man, this is just, the problem is that they're wanting all of these mystical, special things that, and fighting all of these misconceptions within the fitness industry, what these other trainers are going to tell them. And you've got to do, special power training and ballistic training to develop their power and their speed. And you've got to do this, that, and the other thing. And like I said earlier, our program doesn't seem glamorous in that regard, because it's just safe, sensible, science-based training that is not sensationalistic and mystical in any way. So it's hard to, kind of sell it, because, think of the parents' position. They don't know any better. If they're talking to one trainer that's claiming to have all these special things and doing all these special, unique things that are, tailored to the athlete and helping them develop these special skills and functional training and all this kind of stuff, and they're hearing that, and then they're hearing me just talk about things that don't sound so glamorous and mystical, it's just a hard sell. And, I'm kind of like in your camp, is like, you know what, I don't even want to mess with this.
This episode is brought to you by Strength Portal. You need a software platform that enables you to track workouts, deliver consistent high-quality client experiences, and scale your business. The problem is you're still using pen and paper or basic spreadsheets to run your business, which leads to inconsistent workout experiences and stifles your business growth, making you feel frustrated. Strength Portal have worked closely with the HIIT industry to create a software platform to manage and scale your niche business. Strength Portal is used by multiple businesses in the high-intensity strength training community, namely Discover Strength, Smart Strength Austin, MedX Precision Fitness, and more. To help support the podcast, go to strengthportal.com/high-intensity business and sign up for your ideal package now. That's strengthportal.com/high-intensity business. And now back to the episode. I also wonder, like, is it how difficult to your point there, how difficult it might be to retain those people? If it's a kid who's like, oh, you know what, I really want to go and do that functional exercise over there where you like swing the arm like a baseball bat or whatever it is. I don't know what the machine's called now. But that could cause a problem, right? That you've put all this effort into, trying to train this person, trying to get them good results, and then they churn. And that's a bit of that's not great. I think that there might be some exceptions to this. I don't know whether you have this, Tim, but I know some of our colleagues have like a family pass. So they do like a deal with a family, like a membership, and that'll be like the mum and dad, and I don't know why I'm thinking like the nuclear family, but like, daughter and son, they'll all train. Now, I'm not sure how frequently they all train and whether the kids get bored and end up doing something else eventually, but I suppose that might work. But I'll be honest, I do know a few studios who do have a heavy focus on young athletes. And I just don't think they do particularly well, to be honest with you. I think it's a struggle to serve that market in what we do. And you probably have to make a lot of adjustments to your business model in order to make that work. And I don't think it's that worthwhile.
Yeah, I think we'd probably have more success in this area if we're talking the children of our existing clients. So if we're training somebody and we've got a good, solid client that is a strong believer in the program and is experienced themselves and is really on board with the program, and then they say, hey, I'd really like to get my son or daughter in here, and my son plays football or whatever, and I'd really like to get him in here and doing this, and then I think it's a much easier sell, because they're already on board with the program. They already know us and trust us and have that respect for what we're doing. So that would be one thing. But just going out in the community and trying to sell this to random people out there, it is going to be a tough sell. And maybe some people are into that and they have a special, knack for it and special ability to, really make that kind of a sale and convince people. It's great. I wouldn't discourage anybody or anything like that. But I think a lot of us, there would be kind of a lot of frustration in that, and it may not be, fruitful.
Yeah, I agree. And there's one other thing you did, which I want to point out, which I think is really important. Ignore your customers' advice. They don't have a clue. More often than not, your client does not understand your business, your target market, who you resonate with, that kind of thing. And sometimes they do. And I think it's a real skill, and something that Luke has talked to me about before, in terms of discerning what feedback to actually listen to and what not to. And I tend to think that their personal feedback of their own experience and how they feel about it is really valuable, right? That type of feedback. But when they're trying to give you advice on like marketing or business model or whatever, then it's time to be super careful and probably listen more to your colleagues who are experts versus your clients on that stuff.
Right. I definitely think, one of the things I always try to do is that if somebody's trying to offer me their suggestions, their advice or whatever, obviously always be respectful.
Sure.
I don't want to just be flippant with them or just dismiss them or, anything like that. So be respectful, listen to what they have to say and, give it due consideration.
Sure.
So, all that's fine. But I would agree with you that a lot of times they just don't understand our business and they don't understand the philosophy at a deeper level like we do. And, and a lot of,
and sometimes they totally get it, right? Sometimes they're like, oh yeah, like I am, I'm your ideal customer and I understand why, and they get it. And obviously a lot of us attract, CMOs and very, very clever business people. We should totally listen to what they have to say.
Right. So, you never know where there's going to be a nugget of gold in there somewhere.
Absolutely.
So I always listen and I consider it, but a lot of times I don't really feel it's good advice.
Normally not. Awesome, Tim. All right. So, moving on, I just wanted to address some questions from the internet for the last sort of 20 minutes here. So again, we've talked a lot, right, in the last few months. So chances are we might have covered this already, but I thought, well, let's just talk about it anyway, just in case. So and frankly, I would have maybe covered this in previous podcasts, but again, I've done 390 odd episodes now, so I can't remember. So the chest press, and I guess this particular individual is talking about the MedX chest press, but I feel like this is probably applicable for lots of chest press machines. But you could take the MedX to make it easier. Do you advocate that the client locks out on the chest press momentarily in order to fully adduct the humerus so that you recruit the chest musculature most effectively? So just short of hyperextension, so they're just locking out momentarily, or not? What's your advice and position on this?
Yeah, well, I think the key question here is addressing the MedX chest press, because the MedX chest press is unique in the sense that you're not just pressing it straight forward and letting it come straight back, that it has that converging nature to it. So, the force, well, let me step back. Obviously, the idea of not locking out on a pressing movement, leg press, overhead press, or not locking out on standard chest presses, where you would be just pressing in a straight line, back and forth. The reason not to lock out is because the direction of force is completely in line with the bones. And when you lock out, there is technically no effective lever to impose any load on the musculature at that point. And it's just being supported by the bones and the joints. Okay. So obviously we don't lock out. We avoid that position. We keep, maybe just a slight bend in the joint in question to keep a little bit of lever and applying that load at that position. Okay. But yes, with the MedX chest press, or maybe another chest press that has that converging nature to it, you do have this situation where even if you were to so-called lock out, there is still a load and a lever being applied to the pectoral muscles, the chest musculature. So then the question becomes, do you allow that lockout or whatever? So let's kind of real quickly just address what the proper form would be on this exercise. You should have your, as you lay back against the seat pad, the back pad, you would lay back, keep your chest elevated. All right. So there literally should be a little bit of an arch or an extension in your low back. Your rib cage and your chest area is sort of elevated. Your shoulders are driven down and back, keeping them fixed into the back pad. And as you press forward and allow the arms to converge together, you're not changing any of that relationship I described. So in other words, you don't slump your chest, you don't hunch your shoulders, you don't shrug, you don't allow your shoulders to roll forward, away from the back pad. If you maintain that posture and positioning, and then you press and the arms come together and you adduct the arms together and so forth, you can be essentially have your elbows locked out and still have a meaningful load in the pectoral muscles of the chest. Okay. So I would, in that case, I do two things. I allow sort of that full extension of the elbows, but I also apply this sort of the squeeze contraction for a moment. How in many of the rotary single joint movements, you kind of perform the positive movement, pause in the contracted position for a second or two, and then return. So I do kind of pause in that contracted position on the MedX chest press, keep contracting, sort of squeezing the pectoral muscles for a second or two before then performing that turnaround to come back down through the negative. So that's the way I would perform that. And I done properly the way I've described it, you're not unloading the chest, even though your elbows may be fully extended. Now, the only kind of weird things that sometimes happen, and this is more per the individual, sometimes it's almost always a woman, but I've seen it happen with some men, but particularly like real thin, flexible women, they can not only sort of lock out their elbows, but they can hyperextend to the point where it's almost like their elbow bends backwards, the other way. Like they've got so much hyperflexibility that they can sort of go beyond just a simple full extension or like a lockout, and it goes into hyperextension, and you've got sort of looks like the elbow's bending backwards, the opposite direction. And I've seen that on a couple of occasions with women. I even had a male client that was real skinny guy. He was a swimmer. Just hyper flexible, and whenever he would do the chest press, or even I had him do push-ups on the floor, and he would push all the way up, hyperextend, and his elbow would bend back the other way. In that case, that's going too far. I would not want to see something like that. So for that personal sort of ability of that person, I would not let them go into that kind of crazy hyperextension type of thing. So if they just went to the point where they kind of were allowing the elbows to straighten, and if they were keeping the rest of the form aspects the same and keeping the load on the pecs, that would be fine. But no need to kind of push forward and go into hyperextension. And one of the things you really have to watch for too is that what kind of predicates on making this effective and maintaining the load on the pecs is keeping those shoulders down and back, keeping the chest elevated, not slumping or hunching or rounding the shoulders forward. So there's a lot of things that people can do wrong on that exercise. And if they're doing some of those other form discrepancies, they could be unloading the pecs and not training effectively. But I'm describing this based on, if you're doing all the other form aspects correct, you can kind of pause in the contracted position, have the elbows extended, keep the load on the pecs because of that converging nature. Because that converging nature, even if the elbows are straight, that converging nature is attempting to pull the arms apart. So that adduction, the function of the pecs adducting the upper arm, across the chest, that's still under load in that direction due to that converging nature.
Yeah. Beautiful. Well said. I'm going to check our own process around that now. I think we pretty much advocate exactly what you said, but I'm just going to double check.
Okay.
Perfect. Thank you. So got a few more minutes here. So we'll have a crack at the next one. It's going to be hard to keep this tight, Tim, but
I'll do my best.
Have you got a hard stop at the hour? Have you got a client?
No, I'm pretty flexible today. So whatever you want to do.
Okay. I can run over by 5 or 10 minutes. So to still try and keep it tight, but let's see if we can answer it fully. So, this is a question about using memory foam and yoga blocks for seat bolstering. Right. So various pieces of equipment. I know many of our colleagues use, supports and whatnot to help certain clients get in a comfortable position on certain machines. This particular question is based on the fact that they have all Nautilus One equipment. So they have back and neck bolsters for some clients on the leg curl and hip adductor machines. Before I go any further, I just want to give your perspective on this, on the use of memory foam and yoga blocks for seat bolstering and client positioning on machines.
Okay.
Yeah.
So
do you have a general overview of it, or
well, I'm not sure specific? I really know what a yoga block is, but okay. I may. But
these foam blocks, they're like little squares, like that.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. Yeah. I've seen those. Yeah. I've seen those, I've been in different people's facilities and I've seen that people have those from time to time. I've never used those and I've never really had a discussion on what they're doing with those things. But beyond that, just this idea of, whether it's memory foam or some other sorts of pads and things like that to provide support, I definitely, advocate that in certain situations. So I have a lot of various little pads, foam neck rolls, and other sorts of pads. I have sort of lumbar support pads. Even, going back to our discussion on the chest press, I even have it's like a lumbar support mesh. It's like a framed, like a kind of a metal frame that is surrounded in mesh. And it's got these straps, and it's made for lumbar support, like you would put on a chair behind you or something.
I know
like
that
that.
Kind of thing. Yeah.
Yeah. So what I do is I use that on the MedX chest press to put down in their lower lumbar region, and that causes them, like I was saying, is kind of get their back into an extended position and kind of keeps that back up and extended, and kind of signals them to keep that posture, keep that chest up and things like that. So that I do that on the MedX leg press, whether it's the regular leg press or the Avenger, it's the same type of seat. So I do put, I've got sort of a lumbar support, kind of a lumbar roll that I do put under their lower lumbar region to support their back on that exercise. And obviously there's a number of exercises that I may put like a head pad or a neck roll behind their head to kind of help hold their head and neck neutral. And
which machines might you have the head support to keep their head neutral? Can you give us some examples?
Yeah. Sometimes on the, depending on the person and their overall, proportions and things, sometimes I will use it on the MedX chest press. Because some people, if they lay back and they try to put their head back on the chest or the back pad, it seems like they're kind of arching and kind of craning their head back. So I'll put something behind there to bring it forward. Always use a head pad behind their head on the MedX leg press. That's another one. I've got a Nautilus 10-degree chest fly machine, and you're laying down on your back. A lot of people it feels more comfortable to them to have their head supported a little bit on that exercise. On occasion, I've used it on either the MedX seated leg curl or the leg extension. I can't really use it all the time on that because the back pad is not tall enough for really tall individuals. I mean, it's tall enough in the sense that it fully supports them. I don't think it's a bad back pad. I'm just saying that for some people, it doesn't extend far enough up to be behind their head. So you can't really put a head pad behind them on that. But sometimes when I've got somebody that's got a shorter torso, I will, let them lean back and give them some back or some head and neck support on that. Yeah.
Do you think you could do us a favor, Tim, for this particular podcast post? Could you send us a few photos of examples of machines with supports?
Yeah.
That'd be really useful, because I think this is easier to tackle when you're talking about like one specific machine and a specific individual and their proportions, right? That's when it really makes more sense. So, so that'd be great if you could send those over for the post.
Yeah, sure. I could,
and I'll ping you a reminder. But just expanding on from that. So we have got an example here. So let's go through this one. Are you familiar with the Nautilus One range of machines?
Yeah, generally, yeah.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. So the Nautilus One Leg Press seems like the seat is too low for a lot of people, even with the angle of the back seat increased. Since the leg press machine cannot be raised or lowered, what kind of seat bolster is advantageous? Obviously, a firm versus memory foam, so FIRM versus memory foam is better, that can be fixed, not to move during the exercise, are this person's particular thoughts. Any other tips? They say that their partner scooches their rear end up the back seat about 6 inches and retains that position whilst doing the leg press due to the being squeezed between the back seat and the foot pad. So this is, I think, I could be getting this wrong. I think Bill A. Simone might have recommended this particular form in one of his books, where you're not actually, your hamstrings aren't even, or glutes are touching the seat. But their concern with this is that they can feel it can lead to injury, especially for a beginner. So I don't know if that was a very big question, but it's regarding the Nautilus One Leg Press, both the use of supports, but also just the general positioning. What was your thoughts on that?
Yeah. So if I'm understanding this correctly, I'm pretty sure I am. They're saying is that if you sit your buttocks all the way down on the seat pad, you're positioned too low relative to the foot plate, and you're not really in the proper position. So they're wanting to get people, as you described, if somebody's getting 6 inches up the back pad off the seat pad, and they're kind of basically hovering in midair, with the exception is just the load is holding them against the back pad, and their butt's not even on the seat. Mm-hmm. Okay, so if they're asking, all right, what would you do in that case, or what sort of pad? Number one, I wouldn't like that type of form and that positioning. Okay, so the first thing I do is if that's the problem with that machine, and I've never had that exact machine, so I'd have to examine it to see exactly what's going on with that. But if that's a big flaw in that machine and you're 6 inches off in your positioning, if you're sitting on the back pad, I would do one of two things. I would get rid of that machine and get a better one, or I would try to construct something to permanently, like, let's say, raise that seat pad up. Like one thing you could do, if there's room, and again, I'd have to look at it and see what's all involved there, but you could remove the back or the seat pad, and you could underneath the seat pad get a big spacer block of some sort made, even just a big block of wood or something, drill some holes in it, and you could take and mount that seat pad 6 inches higher, and have it, kind of permanently mounted and fixed in that position, so that you don't need any supplementary seat pads to put on there. You don't need to be hovering in midair with, your buttocks 6 inches off the pad. You would just raise the seat pad to do that. One of my questions or concerns would be is that sort of the shape of the back pad. If that back pad is shaped and formed in such a way that if it's intended that you're sitting all the way down on the traditional seat pad to have your back properly supported, then if you move
the curve,
you move 6 inches up the pad and you're mismatched with the relationship of the shape of that back pad, that could be a problem. So I would want to look at those things, but if it were possible, I'd probably want to come up with a way of just remounting the seat pad, 6 inches higher with a spacer block in there to keep it there. And then you could have the person just sit down and be properly positioned. In lieu of that, you'd have to come up with some sort of elevation pad, like a booster pad, to lay on top of the seat pad. You might have a tendency for that thing to move around, but I think if you're sitting on it, it would probably stay pretty fixed,
So what Tim is also effectively subtly saying is, if you are interested in his services to help potentially modify that machine, then email tim@stronglifetraining.com.
I'll take a look. When we get done with the podcast, I'll go online and maybe look at some pictures and see what that looks like. But if that's the case, and if a person is really out of position with the way that seat is, made from the manufacturer, that's just another one of those things that I scratch my head is like, who designed this machine? And did you not test it out and use it before you sold it? Could you not figure out that the seat is not at the right height? It's like,
I think I've used the exact machine, if not one very similar. And I had the same experience, except I wasn't that high on the seat. And it actually made for a really nice leg press experience. And I had the most discomfort I've had in my legs in a good way, and soreness following that leg press. But I was only elevated a little bit, but I did do that technique. I was coming off the bottom. But then, obviously, I've done this stuff a lot, so my form is good and I train very safely, but we can't always count on that for beginners, right? And people who don't have the same motor skills and that kind of thing.
Because that's the thing. Real quick, that's the thing that I would be concerned about. It's like, well, if you've got some highly skilled subject that can get into that position and be 6 inches off the pad and really just very precisely perform that exercise, keep their back in position, keep their pelvis from moving and all of that kind of stuff, that may be possible. But when you're looking at applying this across the board to all the different types of clients that we have, and some people that are just not very skilled and don't have very good control and have form discrepancies and things, I would want to try to eliminate any potential problems and minimize the need for getting overly complicated with, form and positioning. So.
I appreciate that. Tim, again, awesome podcast. Thank you so much. I think these are some great answers to some very common questions in our space. So what's the best way, just remind the listeners, best way to find out about you and the services you have to offer to our colleagues in personal training?
Yeah, I would suggest that people just go to my facility's website, which is stronglifetraining.com. And once you get there, there's, the email address, the phone number, there's a contact form where you can ask a question and send it in and, that kind of thing. So either of those ways you'll get in touch with me. All of that goes to me. So get in touch with me. You can ask questions and then we could follow up with each other to handle anything that you might need.
Awesome. And Tim only charges $5,000 per hour to be on the phone. So it's a great deal.
I
wish. Awesome. Thank you, Tim. And for everyone listening, to get the free resource to help you grow your business, I talked about these earlier, free sales presentations to get more clients, PDFs on how to get clients, attract great trainers, etc. Loads of free resources that I've accumulated over the years to help you with your HIIT business. Please go to highintensitybusiness.com/free. And to find the blog post for this episode, please go to highintensitybusiness.com and search episode 393. And until next time, thank you very much for listening. This episode is brought to you by Strength Portal. You need a single software platform that enables your trainers to deliver consistent, high-quality workouts, track client progress, and scale your business. The problem is you're still using pen and paper or basic spreadsheets to run your business, which leads to poor client experiences, inaccurate tracking, and prevents you from growing your business, making you feel frustrated. Strength Portal understand your challenge and have worked closely with the HIIT industry to create a software platform to manage and scale your niche business. You can integrate with MindBody, manage a standardized exercise and workout library for your team, track workouts effectively, and produce client reports at the click of a button. Strength Portal is used by multiple businesses in the high-intensity strength training community, namely Discover Strength, Smart Strength Austin, MedX Precision Fitness, and more. Starting with Strength Portal is super simple. Number 1, sign up for the best package for your business. Number 2, let Strength Portal take the load off and help onboard your business onto the platform. And number 3, start delivering consistent workout experiences and scale your business to the next level. To help support the podcast, please go to strengthportal.com/high-intensity-business and sign up now, so you can stop feeling frustrated about your business and start to scale your business to its true potential. Go to strengthportal.com/high-intensity-business.